Chung này cho cái chị tạo như này.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, our apologies for the quality of the video. We underestimated the technical challenge a little bit. In a moment, I will share the link of the video on YouTube so that you can have a look at it. It's an absolutely wonderful introduction to TDMU. And now, without further ado, allow me to give the floor to Dr. Ngo Hong Yep, the Vice Rector of Tu Dao Mot University. Please go ahead. Fantastic. Yeah.
Hello.
Hello, we can hear you loud and clear. Yes, please go
Yes.
ahead.
Hello. Kính thưa quý vị đại biểu, kính thưa quý vị khách quý. Trước tiên, tôi xin gửi lời chúc tốt đẹp nhất đến tất cả mọi người. Xin chúc quý vị luôn an toàn, khỏe mạnh trong thời điểm khó khăn này. Thay mặt trường Đại học Thủ dầu Một, tôi xin chân thành cảm ơn và nhiệt liệt chào mừng quý vị đại biểu đến với buổi tọa đàm tăng cường sử dụng tiếng Anh trong môi trường học thuật tại Việt Nam hôm nay. Kính thưa quý vị đại biểu, sự phát triển mạnh mẽ của khoa học xã hội ngày nay đã đặt ra nhiều thách thức cho hệ thống giáo dục toàn cầu. Theo đó, việc tăng cường sử dụng tiếng Anh trong giảng dạy và nghiên cứu đang dần trở thành một xu hướng tất yếu trong lĩnh vực giáo dục.
We cannot hear the part in English. We can read it, but we cannot hear it.
Tuy nhiên, đối với các nước không nói tiếng Anh như Việt Nam, việc sử dụng tiếng Anh trong dạy học, đặc biệt là trong lĩnh vực giáo dục đại học, vẫn còn nhiều thách thức. Vì vậy, trường Đại học Thủ dầu Một phối hợp với tổ chức quốc tế AppliedHE tổ chức buổi tọa đàm hôm nay với mục đích trao đổi với các chuyên gia nước ngoài về tầm quan trọng tiếng Anh trong môi trường giáo dục, cũng như đề xuất các giải pháp nhằm nâng cao năng lực tiếng Anh trong dạy và học tại Việt Nam. Hơn nữa, chúng tôi muốn nhân cơ hội này gửi lời cảm ơn sâu sắc đến các tổ chức quốc tế AppliedHE đã hỗ trợ chúng tôi chuẩn bị tốt nhất cho buổi tọa đàm hôm nay. Một lần nữa, xin cảm ơn quý vị đã có mặt và tham gia. Tôi xin chúc chúng ta có một buổi tọa đàm thành công, hiệu quả. Xin trân trọng cảm ơn tất cả quý vị.
Okay, thank you very much for those opening words in Vietnamese and English. I believe it's now the turn of Dr. Tran Ngoc Mai to say a few words. Is that correct?
Okay, that's right.
We can't see you. We can hear you loud and clear though.
Okay, I'm here.
Fantastic, fantastic. Go ahead, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you very much, Peter, for your introduction. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It is my pleasure to welcome you all to the webinar AppliedHE Vietnam Launch Xchange, the new kid on the block. We really appreciate your attendance during this difficult time, and we are also grateful to AppliedHE agency and those who have been involved in the organization of the event. Now I would like to give you a brief overview of AppliedHE agency, and then I will introduce the main theme of our webinar today. AppliedHE is a new Singapore-based higher education and branding agency, which was founded by Ms. Mandy Moore in 2020. AppliedHE officially launched its English Ready rating system in June 2021. It is also the world's first international rating system for English as a medium of instruction, EMI. The English Ready rating provides a global benchmark of the quality, intent, and frequency of English language used in English teaching programs. The first group of institutions to be rated are from Indonesia, Taiwan, and Vietnam. The main theme of our webinar today is EMI lessons for the future. In this webinar, we will learn the reasons why it is beneficial to use English as a medium of instruction, This webinar is timely and important because it also gives us opportunities to discuss and find out more about the challenges and obstacles non-English speaking countries have been facing when using English as a medium of instruction and what can be done about them. I hope that you will enjoy this special online event. Thank you.
Thank you so much for those warm welcoming words. Now it's the turn of Ms. Mandy Mock, the founder and CEO of AppliedHE, for her presentation. Can see your screen.
Great, thank you. Good afternoon and welcome to the AppliedHE Launch Exchange for Vietnam. We have been very active organizing launch events like this for countries around the world, from Pakistan, Indonesia, to Kazakhstan and Russia, the MENA region, that's Middle East and North Africa, the Philippines, and the next one scheduled after Vietnam is Malaysia. The AppliedHE Exchange is an opportunity for us to give you a flavor of what AppliedHE has to offer, and in exchange to better understand the issues that you are facing in Vietnam. So I'm very grateful to our host, TTMU, especially President Dr. Nguyen Con and Vice Rector Dr. Ngo Hong Deep. Thank you all for your great support. And also to our guest speaker, Professor Moritz Verbugen, Chief Academic Officer from Global University Systems, also known as GUS, and Rector of University of Europe for Applied Sciences in Germany. And finally, thanks to you, the audience from across Vietnam and beyond. Thank you very much for joining us today. I created and launched AppliedHE in January 2020 after an almost 20-year career at QS with the aim of creating an alternative solution in ranking, rating, and branding that better serves the need of more learning and employability-focused applied universities, which I believe are dominant in the ASEAN region and in fact all over the world. At the same time, the solutions AppliedHE offers are compatible with other rankings out there. It's not an either-or choice. AppliedHE can help you with international branding and marketing, student recruitment, benchmarking, and a range of other solutions. Because AppliedHE is the new kid on the block, we are nimbler, hungrier, and more sensitive to your needs, and ready with a whole suite of exciting and innovative services. At the same time, my team, who are also veterans from QS, and I are highly experienced in this sector, so we have an unparalleled track record that speaks for itself. Now, without further ado, let's get started. We have produced AppliedHE as a fresh, modern, and totally relevant concept in benchmarking and branding of higher education institutions. As mentioned, AppliedHE was launched on 1st January of 2020, so we're still very young, just a year and a half old. And now you have an alternative choice from what is currently available in the market. We offer higher education evaluation and branding solutions that's focused on employability and learning. And you'll find that our tagline for the company actually amplifies that: skills and job ready, future proof. Our strength lies in reaching out not only to academics, but also include stakeholders from industry, civil society, government, students, parents, alumni, faculty, etc., basically everybody. Here's an outline of my presentation. I will introduce the company, AppliedHE, and all our initiatives, from evaluation tools, that is the set of ratings, job ready, English ready, and online ready, to building your global reputation with our networking solutions like Future, the world's first professional networking platform for the higher education sector, to our Xchange webinars and events, and Extra, our e-newsletter. And of course, our special events and special projects, which I will share with you later. All these will help your institution achieve not only global, but also local visibility and branding with all your stakeholders quickly and cost effectively. AppliedHE is the new brand for all skills-based employment-focused education. And our mission is designed to help universities to communicate with your stakeholders, engage with your international and local peers, industry and government, and brand your institution worldwide, including improving in the rankings. So in the following slides, I'd like to introduce the initiatives of AppliedHE, and I've grouped them into 4 segments. Let's start with the evaluation tools. When we first started the company in January of 2020, we only had the job ready rating. Today, I'm pleased to say AppliedHE has 3 rating systems. We have the all-round job ready rating system to evaluate the quality of teaching and learning and employability of your graduates. An English ready rating to evaluate the quality of English language as a medium of instruction in non-English speaking countries. And it is also a great marketing tool for the recruitment of international students as well. And the online ready rating, which helps your institution benchmark and promote its online programs and courses. This set of ratings not only serve as benchmarking tools, but they are also effective and affordable marketing tools. They can benchmark your institution's performance for quality improvement, as our criteria are relevant and implementation is relatively quick. And it's not just a rating per se, it also provides market intelligence so that you can make informed decisions and strategies without having to go for expensive market consultancies. As a marketing tool, it can quickly communicate to your stakeholders your institution's excellence and quality. And the fact that you are affiliated with the AppliedHE brand also shows that you are job and skills ready, future-proof. Basically, the ratings is a great tool to meet your institution's quest for global branding and excellence. So the AppliedHE Job Ready rating is so versatile that it can be applied to not only universities, but also suitable for professional institutions. And by professional, we mean your vocational, the TVETs, polytechnics, and colleges. It's also suitable for business schools and online education. The Job Ready rating is aimed at evaluating professional education such as engineering, nursing, medicine, law, accounting, art and design, media, basically any program that involves industry collaboration, regardless of whether it's for universities, online education, professional institutions, and business schools. And we do it differently. Here's the new perspective, the creative twist. We do not do a rating of your institution per se. We rate your institution based on your programs by employment cluster. This means we can now bring a spotlight to your every program, regardless of whether it's big or small. And currently, there is no marketing tool in the market to help you achieve this. Take, for example, the employment cluster, healthcare. The mainstream subjects that fall under healthcare are your medicine, dentistry, nursing, etc. But what about the smaller ones like radiology, physiotherapy, and even hospital administration? Now, with the AppliedHE Job Ready Ratings methodology, we can bring the global spotlight to your every program, whether it's big or small. And this is the employment cluster from the International Standard Industrial Classification. There are 22 employment clusters, and it covers all sectors of the economy. And this list is growing daily because the world is changing so fast that there are many jobs out there today that never existed in the past. Jobs like these: e-commerce, gaming, coding, social media marketing, influencer, blogger, just to name a few. And these are not even proper words in the past, but today they are reputable and very much sought after jobs. And our unique approach to rating by employment clusters can accommodate these new jobs and the future economy. You'll note that many of our criteria overlaps with the goals of the SDG, and the rating is done primarily by surveys to your stakeholders like your students, faculty, employers, and alumni. So what this means is you will have access to market intelligence of your key stakeholders, and these information are very relevant to your strategies, future plans, internal decision-making, KPIs, etc. And it is market intelligence that you do not have to pay a hefty sum for, as it comes as part of the ratings. This is all part of our effort to help you stretch your budget as much as possible. Once rated, you'll be presented with the AppliedHE Job Ready Ratings badge, and you can use it on all your marketing materials. The ratings are awarded by employment cluster, and the country of origin is clearly stated so that stakeholders are clear on the market that you serve. And this is very important as employment and jobs differ in each country. Institutions can score from 1 to 5 job ready, with 5 representing the best institutions, and the rating badges are valid for 3 years. You'll also receive a certificate listing the score and all the evaluated programs. So this means even your smallest program will be able to share the global limelight. and you can use the certificate in all your marketing materials as well. The job ready ratings will help to associate your institution with quality of teaching and learning and employability of your graduates. Now let's look at the AppliedHE English Ready rating. It's a great tool to evaluate an institution's English medium of instruction readiness. As you know, many universities around the world now offer programs in English, but the level and completeness of English language instruction varies greatly, especially for universities from non-English speaking countries which offer English language degree programs. So to summarize, the AppliedHE English Ready rating is a useful internal benchmarking tool and a great marketing tool for the recruitment of international students. The rating enables you to rate the extent and quality of instruction in English, not just for individual programs, but also suitable for departments and/or institutions. It's a great tool for international benchmarking of EMI and identifying strengths and weaknesses. It's also an effective tool for the recruitment of international students. And of course, the surveys help you to understand better your stakeholders' perception of EMI. Once rated, you will receive a badge and a certificate which you can use on all your marketing materials and let the world know that your programs are English ready. Great for the recruitment of international students. I'm pleased to announce that TDMU has already done the English Ready rating, and my colleague Peter will be sharing the results during his presentation later. The third rating, online education, which used to be a virgin space in terms of regulation and often seen as second best or for those needing a second chance, has shed its negative image because of the current COVID situation. In today's environment, online degrees are an increasingly appealing alternative to traditional on-campus programs. COVID-19 has brought the future forward. Everyone is going online these days, including us. Online learning is here to stay, and even if things go back to normal, it won't be the normal that we know, but the new normal, which is why we need to be ahead of the curve now, as there is a huge demand for online courses. The future is going to be a hybrid mix of online and physical attendance, and the earlier we're ready for it, the better. The benefits of being online ready rated are manifold. First, it enables your institution to have a global benchmark and understand better how others' online programs are performing. It's also a great marketing and branding tool to attract not only domestic, but also international students, as it helps to demonstrate your institution's online ready learning to a global audience. And with this rating, you can understand your stakeholders' perceptions of the different aspects of online learning so that you can create relevant strategies to meet their needs. And once rated, you will receive a certificate and a badge to let the world know that your institution is online ready. So now we come to the second group of initiatives, and that's strategies for global reputation and networking. We recently launched Future in January. Future is the world's first professional networking platform for the higher education sector. We also have physical and virtual events under the brand of Xchange, and an e-news wire called Extra, now indexed by Google News. So Future was launched on the 20th of January of this year. It is the world's first professional networking platform, specially designed for the higher education sector. And Future aims to connect everyone from high school to professional career to lifelong learning for the 3 E's: education, employment, and everything in between. These are the most important career milestones in life. And from the moment you're a high school student to being a student in higher education, to being a successful graduate, employer, entrepreneur, or even an alumni donor. And all these stakeholders will be centered around institutions and industries and the 22 employment clusters that I introduced earlier for the job ready rating. And there is nothing like this on the market, so we are in a very blue ocean indeed. Future is designed for higher education leaders, students, alumni, and employers who want to stay informed about the latest developments in the higher education sector. Besides the usual social media activities, you can also use Future as a teaching aid, and we will be introducing a new feature to help you with alumni engagement and management, something many universities are still not very strong in, and I will speak more about this service in a short while. In the pipeline are also services for student recruitment, internships, research collaboration, and lifelong learning. In short, eventually future will include the entire higher education and career experience from leaving high school to retirement. It's free and it is the only professional networking platform you'll ever need. So please sign up for future and encourage your friends and peers to do so as well. The new feature I want to touch on in future is the Alumni Engagement and Management Service. Institutions of higher learning in many parts of the world have long underestimated the value of their alumni network. And we all know that investing in alumni relations can provide a high return on investment for an institution. For example, alumni can act as recruiters for the institution. They can help open doors to employers and industry partners, and they can share their industry knowledge. They can act as mentors, become students of lifelong learning programs, and they can even tap on as donors for new projects. A strong alumni engagement strategy is not built overnight, but fortunately, AppliedHE can help your institution get started. As you can see from my slide here, there is a whole host of stuff that we can help you with your alumni engagement and management. And you can even design and customize your page on Future to reflect your institution's branding, like NTU here. Now you can read all the text later as the slides will be provided to you after this webinar. I just want to draw your attention to the 2 points in bold, and that is Future is globally accessible and Facebook is not accessible in China. And the second point is this is a free service, so please do take advantage of it. If you would like to learn more about how AppliedHE can help you with your alumni engagement and management, please join our coming webinar on the 10th of August, 2021. We have invited one speaker from every continent for diversity to share with you how and what their university is doing for alumni engagement and management. So we have a speaker from Asia, Africa, Europe, yes, Professor Morris is speaking again here, and the US. Hope to see all of you online on the 10th of August. Another strategy for global branding is, of course, our fiscal events, but they need to be on hold now. But to quickly give you a quick introduction of our fiscal events, which go by the brand Xchange, you can host an exchange event by employment cluster or by subject, or you can host an exchange by region, or even drill down to a specific country. For example, Xchange Vietnam. Depending on your priorities, we can organize events to suit you, and these events are an effective strategy for global branding and networking. And by God's will, we hope to resume in 2022. So when the pandemic hit last year, and there was no way we can travel for our fiscal events, so instead of sitting around and feeling sorry for ourselves, we started a series of Squaring the Circle debate webinars. It was fun, it was provocative, very refreshing indeed, and I believe we were the most active in the online space at that time, as we were organizing a webinar every other week from the month of June to the end of the year. And we're continuing this regular webinar series into this year with one webinar every month instead of every other week, as we do not want you to complain of webinar fatigue. Another regular webinar that is alternating with Squaring the Circle debate is the Fireside Chat. So for the rest of this year, we will have a webinar every first Wednesday of the month with Fireside Chat and Squaring the Circle debate, alternating every other month all the way to December of 2021. Always on a Wednesday evening, always at 8 p.m. Singapore time. So please keep your monthly first Wednesday nights free. For your information, our next event is session 3 on 4th of August, 7 p.m. Vietnam time, with the topic PhD is in the 21st century, what it takes. Hope to see all of you online on the 4th of August. In addition to regular monthly webinars, we also organize bespoke webinars according to clients' topic of interest. So do check with us if you would like to organize a webinar with your preferred theme. And we have our e-newsletter, Extra. Again, this is unique to AppliedHE. Here, we will help you to promote your institutional news on the global stage. And this is yet another complimentary service from us. All you have to do is send us your news that are extraordinary, and we will publish and promote it to your targeted global audience. In the short space of time since our launch, we're now indexed by Google News. So this means our readership is growing rapidly. Therefore, this is a great and targeted medium to showcase stories from your institution to the world, and it's free, absolutely no charge at all. Special Events is our third group of initiatives, and the bite-sized online internship is under our Special Events, and we're currently running a pilot. This new initiative is the first of its kind, and it involves 3 groups of important stakeholders. They are your students, your university, and the employers. For students, aside from being able to learn, share ideas and knowledge, they will have the opportunity to build a global network while still in school. They'll also build valuable employability skills and connect with several potential employers or industries before deciding on what they really want as a career. Plus, they will have the opportunity to market themselves to prospective employers for permanent employment. For institutions who participate in the bite-sized internship, they will enhance the students' uni experience with this entrepreneurship experience. Institutions will be able to expose their students to an international online environment and connect them to prospective international employers. And for sure, it will definitely enhance and improve university industry experience as well. And for the employers, they will have global access to a diverse talent pool of top talent and original ideas. Employers will also have the opportunity to develop relationships with innovative university partners and the opportunity to brand themselves to this group of prospective and potential employees. So you can see this new service is very innovative and creative and will definitely bring internships to a new level. Special Project is our 4th group of initiatives, and they are namely rankings. So January was a busy month for us. In addition to launching Future, we also launched the Rankometer, a new ranking that is based on one single and transparent benchmark. Now, there has been a huge proliferation of university rankings in recent years. Students, parents, and even employers simply don't know where to look for a reliable comparison of universities. With the Rankometer, we've solved that problem by providing a transparent and reliable measure of university quality. So what is a Rankometer? To be precise, the Rankometer is a composite ranking of the world's 5 most influential world university rankings. Please look up for Rankometer 2.0 in January of 2022 for some very interesting results. So with the launch of the Rankometer, we had good media coverage. And what this means is it adds credibility to the new kit, which is AppliedHE, as we've had many inquiries after. So this means if you're associated with the AppliedHE brand, your branding and global visibility will be greatly enhanced too. So with the recent success and excitement from the launch of the Rankometer, plans to launch more important and relevant rankings are in the pipeline. We are currently looking at launching the AppliedHE Private University Ranking in ASEAN and the AppliedHE Private University Ranking for the Middle East. Another very unique ranking to look out for are the national rankings. We have plans in the pipeline to produce a national ranking for both the private and public universities in each individual country. What are the national rankings? They are a pair of national rankings of the country's private and public universities. Over my almost 2 decades from QS, we have heard so many complaints that the current rankings are not fair because they're putting such heavy emphasis on international reputation and research, etc. While they're important, these things are less relevant to your students and mission, where the key concern is your students getting a job. So how can your institution succeed when the rules don't fit? But sponsoring and supporting our national rankings is your chance to rewrite the rules of the game in terms of university rankings. Change the narrative, change the discussion. Be the rule maker and not the rule taker. So by supporting the AppliedHE national rankings, it will help to attract and nurture the nation's best talent, taking employability to the next level. This is a complimentary service, and we are looking for a local strategic partner. So please contact us if you are interested. This is my second last slide, and I would like to leave with you a list of the first of its kind from AppliedHE. Future, the world's first professional networking platform, specially created for the higher education sector. Alumni engagement and management service, and the bite-sized online internship. And for rankings, we have the Rankometer for the World University Rankings. We have the AppliedHE Private and Public University Rankings by country, and the AppliedHE Private and Public University Rankings by region. And this is my last slide, which gives you an overview of all the products and services that AppliedHE have created in a short space of time since our inception. We are indeed the new kid on the block, and as mentioned in my opening, we are nimbler, hungrier, and more sensitive to your needs. AppliedHE can help you with international branding and marketing, student recruitment, benchmarking, and a range of other solutions locally. That is global and local. So I hope you are as excited as we are creating all these new and innovative strategies for you. Please write to us if you have any questions or would like more information or even request for demos. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mandy. And now it's my pleasure to call on the next speaker, our guest speaker, who is Professor Dr. Maurits van Rooyen, the Chief Academic Officer at Global University Systems and Rector at the University of Europe for Applied Sciences, Germany. And he will speak on EMI Lessons for the Future.
Thank you very much for your kind invitation and introduction. When I was asked to join this webinar some time ago by Mandy Mock and her team, my initial reaction was, well, I'm actually quite busy at the moment. But when I realized it was for my colleagues in Vietnam, I was more than happy to free up some time, because over the decades, I've been many times to Vietnam, and I really always enjoyed my interaction with my colleagues, with my all the hospitality you have offered over the years. So I thought this was the very least I could do in return, and to have a virtual presence here at this webinar. Though I must admit it would even be nicer if I would have been able to fly in person, but hopefully in the future. So a good morning from London, UK. Appreciate on your side of the world it is already afternoon. Just a little bit of introduction so you understand a little bit more the background of what I'm saying. So I am based in London, UK, and I'm the Chief Academic Officer of Global University Systems, which is a company which operates some 25 educational entities around the world, from Vancouver in Canada to Singapore and Hong Kong, India, etc. Some 40 campuses, some 15 universities. We were founded 10 years ago, and obviously because we are global, we operate in the private sector because, as you will appreciate, there is no national funding for a global system. Having said that, we do receive some national funding in some countries. In addition to that, I also am quite hands-on involved in some of our institutions, and that's why I divide my time between London and Germany. I'm also in charge of one of our German universities, University of Europe for Applied Sciences, and I'm the board chairman of GISMA in Germany, which is a business school based there. And that, of course, is relevant when it comes to teaching in English. So the German institutions all have a strong track in teaching in English. University of Europe teaches roughly 50% of all its programs in English, and GISMA actually at the moment 100%. But I'm actually neither German nor British. I'm Dutch. I'm from the Netherlands, and again that is relevant because I started off my academic career in the Netherlands in the 1980s, and my first experience with moving programs into English as a teaching language was at the Erasmus University Rotterdam at the end of the 1980s. And I was the person really who quite provocatively started pushing hard to change our tool of instruction, our language of instruction from Dutch into English. Not all programs, but quite a few programs, quite a few of my professors actually joined me in that movement and started teaching in English. Now, why did we do that? Was that because we didn't love the Dutch language? Of course, we love the Dutch language. That's not really the point. We started doing that, first of all, because we wanted to attract students from across the world, not just students who are able to speak Dutch, and foreign students who first have to learn Dutch to be able to study in the Netherlands, and not just a little bit of Dutch, but actually Dutch as an academic level. That is actually quite a big ask. You know, people would find it very, very difficult, and therefore, to be honest, very rarely international students would make that step. So in order to attract students from outside the Netherlands, we really had to go into teaching in a common spoken language, and that was English. Now, why would we want to attract students from outside the Netherlands? And that was because we wanted to diversify the classroom. That was the key reason. We wanted to have a more international student body on campus and in classrooms. That is important because we realized already at the end of the 1980s that the world was changing. Our graduates very often had to find a career which was international. They would have to work in multicultural settings. They would have to be comfortable in using also English in their working life. So in order to prepare them well for a successful career, it helps enormously to have studied in a classroom and on a campus, which also had a good number of international students. It also helped us, and this is something which is sometimes forgotten, but it also helped us to attract outstanding staff from across the world. So again, if you want to attract some outstanding professors and you ask them first to learn Dutch and teach in Dutch and so on, you know, the chance that there is a big queue is very limited. I mean, there's very few professors who are willing to do that. But if they actually can use the common language, English, it's a much smaller step to move to, in this case, Rotterdam. Another argument which we didn't use at the end of the 1980s, which is definitely very important nowadays, for instance, in Germany, is to attract talent from abroad. So it's not just attracting students from abroad and creating diversity in the classroom, but it's actually to attract really talented people from around the world, because that's really what business needs. So this is about working together with employers. And in Germany, we explicitly get employers to say, we really want you to attract the best and brightest in this particular field for us, and come to Germany, study in Germany, and then do a placement with us, do project with us, and stay with us, because we need really talented young people in our company. And even ministers of economic affairs in Germany have frequently spoken at both GISMA and University of Europe in Germany to expressively say to students, you know, great you're here, now please work with our companies and so on, because we need you. And universities, therefore, can play a major role in stimulating the internationalization of the domestic business. And that is another reason why attracting students with a lower threshold, not asking them to learn Dutch first or German first or Vietnamese first, but actually say you're welcome anyway, is extremely important and a national interest. My second experience with doing this was at Leiden University. And at Leiden University, another Dutch university, I joined Leiden University in 1989. Sorry, in 1999. Sorry, whilst I was actually in London, I did that in parallel. I joined that university as a vice president, and I was asked to develop a portfolio of English taught master degrees, and we developed something like 80 master degrees, all taught in English. So the rule there was very simple. Unless it cannot be taught in English, it will be taught in English. So, of course, there are courses where English language just doesn't work. If you do a degree in Dutch literature, you're not going to teach that in English. That's a challenge. If you do a degree in Dutch law, you're not going to do that in English. But if there is actually no reason why it cannot be done in English, we would teach it in English. And that what became the university rule for all its master's and doctoral level studies. And that is, English is our main language, Dutch is our secondary language. Now, that sounds easy, but you can understand that some of my colleagues, some of the professors were not particularly happy with that because they said, what's wrong with Dutch? Like, we teach in Dutch, we like to teach in Dutch. Why would we suddenly teach in English? And I had to point out that actually Leiden University taught in Latin until the beginning of the 19th century. So Latin was the lingua franca, the common language in all universities in Europe. And certainly Leiden stuck to that for a long time because they always wanted to attract top professors and top students. When Leiden University was founded at the end of the 16th century, it actually, you know, in those days, the Netherlands didn't exist yet. It was in revolt and fighting the Spanish king. Actually, they sent a delegation to Spain, so to hostile territory, to recruit a Spanish professor. They really wanted to come to the university. So no politics there. I mean, they wanted this professor, but of course, they could do that, not because that professor was speaking in Dutch, but because he was able to teach in Latin, and the students would be able to understand Latin and so on. So that was the common language then. Now, obviously, Latin is definitely not used anymore in universities other than sometimes in Europe for ceremonies. But English has become the new lingua franca. And I have no particular emotion with that. That is just a reality. If it had been French or if it had been any other language, we would have chosen that language. I mean, I'm very pragmatic about this. There's no emotion involved in it. English just happens to be the common most second spoken language in the world. And therefore, it is very attractive to use that. And it serves the purpose. One of the interesting things I discovered at Leiden was the big advantage of using English for marketing. And this is where, you know, because I was working in those days, both in London at the University of Westminster and at Leiden University in the Netherlands at the same time, I could compare that. The big problem in England is that everybody speaks English. All the marketing material, the entire university is in English. And you would say that's a great advantage, but actually it's also a disadvantage because that means that there is only one language. And all your marketing materials addressing both your domestic students and your international students. And what I discovered at Leiden University is because I had two languages, I could actually use marketing materials to really, when it was in Dutch, I would approach the Dutch students, and you did not need to explain where Leiden was, what the history was, who had studied there, because they all knew that, right? So that was clearly information they need. They just wanted to know exactly what kind of grades do I have at secondary school, etc., and how do I progress there? And so the questions are very different. And when you learn English, you can actually explain the history of the institution, you explain what you're good at, and so on. Those are the kind of things you want to present. So you create totally different websites, totally different marketing materials, and so on. in order to address very effectively your audience. And in a British university struggles with that because they have to address many different type of people, many different prospective students at the same time. So it is actually can be a big advantage if you use the fact that you are bilingual in a smart way. You would say, great, all these are sensible arguments, very rational arguments. Who could disagree with that? And then, of course, the reality is that rationality alone is not enough. Language is also a very emotional topic. Not for me personally. For me, it's just a tool. But for others, politicians, for instance, language is also national identity. And when you touch that, people can become quite sensitive about that. And it's certainly, I discovered that the hard way, or rather a colleague of mine who just happened to be a Minister of Education then discovered it the hard way, because he actually said, you know, Erasmus University, what Professor Moritz is doing is absolutely wonderful. He got a lot of pushback, and you had to go to Parliament and apologize and so on, because they felt he kind of offended the Dutch language. And but of course, the truth is we just have to recognize that it's an emotional topic. The rational arguments in using English in a big way is clearly there. It's a tool. It's not more than that. But we also have to recognize that it comes with anxiety. Students, for instance, you know, they are very nervous about having to do assessments in English, right? So they might be okay with listening to a professor in English. They might even be motivated and confident enough to be to involve in discussion in the classroom in English. But wow, then to sit an assessment, an exam in another language, this is what makes them very nervous. And you know, very often I have agreed that students had the choice of a language of assessment. They could still do that also in their own language in order to take some of that anxiety away. Nowadays, it's less because young people are much more comfortable with English. But certainly in the early days, this was something which students always mentioned to me, saying, hey, I can fail my exam because my English isn't good enough. And this is actually quite interesting. So when you go and study in America, Australia, and certainly also the UK, of course, there is a tendency to also be quite strict that you do really speak and write good English. So they will correct the English all the time. When you study in English in a country which doesn't have English as the main language, whether that is, well, any country, whether it is the Netherlands or Germany or any other country, of course, there is a bit more leniency on language, because they actually see it really as a tool rather than continuously correcting all the grammar and spelling mistakes. And it's quite interesting that it works in language works in a slightly different way, whether you go and study in a country which has the language as a native language, or whether you study in a country where the language is a second language. And actually, it can be also an advantage for students. But the other group we should not ignore is the anxiety amongst our colleagues, our professors. Right? It sounds easy to say, okay, now teach in English. It's not that easy. I mean, you know, here we are. I'm speaking English to you all the time. It's my second language. It's maybe your second language. Some of you find that very comfortable, but others actually they have to concentrate a little bit more than if I would have been speaking in Vietnamese. It is much harder work, both to speak it, but certainly also to listen to it and to write it. So for some professors, they're actually kind of nervous about that. Yes, they speak English. They can easily go to a restaurant and have a chat in English, but teaching in English means you have to master the language. You don't just need to understand English and speak English, but you have to master the language at an academic level. And that is actually, for many of our colleagues, quite a challenge. It's not an easy thing to do. And One of the key things there is, I think we do need to be aware you cannot introduce English as a second language unless you have very good language support for both students and staff, and certainly also the professors, because otherwise they struggle. Of course, the shortcut to introducing English as a second language, the fastest way of getting that is through visiting professors, inviting professors from abroad, which helps in the overall internationalization of campus and classroom. And of course, nowadays, a tool which I did not have at my disposal when we started doing this is the hybrid teaching, the fact that we can teach also virtually. We can get professors to come and teach virtually to our classes, and even get groups of students around the world to work together, which is, I think, a wonderful way of using English as a second language, whereby a group of students working on a project, let's say in Vietnam, work with a group of students working on a project in Germany or anywhere else in the world. And that's actually a much more relaxed form of using English as a second language. They're working together, all of them using English as a second language, but trying to do a joint project, but across the world. And this is only possible now, really, due to the use of modern technology. And it's a very powerful tool. When it comes to on-campus and in-classroom teaching in English, I can share with you also my experience that it is always a marginal activity unless you reach what we call a tipping point, unless you have enough critical mass, enough students on campus and in the classroom who actually speak another language than the domestic language. And in my experience, that percentage of students who should be from abroad, in order to make them part of your core activities, to make them part of the mainstream on campus, is somewhere around the 20%, somewhere between 15 and 25%. So I found that if it is, certainly below 15% students, actually kind of an extra, you need to always think about, we also have to translate this for our international students and so on. Once you go into the 20-25% international students, it becomes actually a normal part of your operation, and you become really a truly bilingual country. So, key practical questions: support of English language on campus, how to attract students from around the world to come to your university, how to use English as an effective tool in your marketing, how to also attract outstanding professors, colleagues to come to your campus. Those are, I think, issues which I'm sure Applied Higher Education, Mandy Mock and her team can help you in putting that in place. So it's also for this reason that I was more than happy to join this webinar. Not only talk about my experience, but also give this recommendation and saying it's actually a big opportunity, but it is not as simple as it might look. It's not about let's translate everything into English and now we are visible. If you really have a higher level of ambition, you want to become a more international university, you want your students to be prepared for a more international career, you want to go up in the different rankings and ratings, and you want to serve the national economy, your regional economy, the corporate partners, the employers you work with, where your students are going to. If that is all part of your ambition, I would say use the experience which has been gained elsewhere, get professional advice. And yes, it is a great opportunity. I've seen the institutions I work with really flourish as a result of that. And I can only recommend this as a great strategy for universities. I'm happy to answer any questions or listen to any comments, both now via chat. I also will say that I always respond to people who write to me via LinkedIn. and I later will also share my my email address. Thank you very much, Indette, for having me here, and I look forward to my next visit to Vietnam.
Thank you so much, Professor Mao. Although I am not in Vietnam, I'm sure I speak for all the Vietnamese that it was a wonderful speech, very, very informative. Yes, the point that Professor Van Rooyen made about the comments, feel free to drop them in the Q&A box and the chat box, which you can find in the Zoom platform. I will just continue with my presentation, maybe give you some more time to think about questions to ask. They can be questions for Mandy, myself, or of course, Professor Van Rooyen. Now I'll share my presentation. My presentation is about the rating systems, which Mandy already briefly talked about a moment ago. I believe you can see my screen. No. Uh-oh. Okay, now you can see my screen. Okay, it's here, fine. Yeah, so as Mandy mentioned, AppliedHE has 3 rating systems: a job-ready rating system, the English-ready rating system, and the online-ready rating system. Now, the English-ready rating system is most relevant today because we're talking about English as a medium of instruction, but I'll also very briefly talk about the online-ready rating system and the job-ready rating system. For the English-ready rating system, of course, we will talk a bit about TDMU, who is our host, who's also the first institution in Vietnam to be English-ready rated. So yes, I'll introduce the rating concept to you. After that, I'll provide you with an overview of the criteria and outcomes, and then I'll run with you through the detailed rating results using TDMU as an example, so that you can really see how the rating works, how it might be able to help your institution. First of all, just so that we're all on the same page, what is EMI, or English as a medium of instruction? Well, there's basically a growing trend in higher education that English is the most important language in diplomacy, in science, in business, and elsewhere. And so a lot of universities in non-English speaking countries offer EMI to attract local and international students, whether it's short-term or long-term. EMI programs are also often taught by faculty whose English is not their first language. And there's a great deal of differences between different levels of EMI between countries of institutions. So what is considered EMI programs in one country is not the same in another country. Now, the challenges we face is that there's no global standard. You could argue that if I give you a textbook in English, then the course is taught in English, even though perhaps the lectures are done in a local language or not. To some people, that's an English taught program, to others, it's not. Students and faculty can both struggle because they have limited English language ability. And this is a big problem because it can ultimately lower the quality of English instruction. EMI is also often combined with English as a second language. And although that's not necessarily a problem, it does change the kind of course that's being offered, the learning goals that are being set. And finally, EMI is often imposed top-down. So the strategic part of the university can see that, yes, it's very important that we convert certain courses to English, but then how that's being executed, faculty and students in the classroom, they might not be sufficiently consulted or not have sufficient motivation or buy-in. So the English-ready rating system, we basically want to measure the extent, quality and frequency of English language use in an institution or in some of their programs. It's a tool for international benchmarking of EMI, and it helps to identify strengths and weaknesses. It can also be a marketing and branding tool. You can tell an outside audience, hey, our institution is English-ready rated. So you can study here and know that you are getting a high quality English language program. And the service can also help you understand stakeholder perception because of course, we come in as a kind of external third party. So responses to our surveys might be slightly different from what an in-house survey might produce. Now, looking at the rating criteria, as mentioned before, we look at the frequency of English use, the intensity in terms of what course components, and this ranges from the textbook to the slides to the examination, and also basic administrative actions such as checking grades, searching the online catalog of the library, for instance, can be done in English. And then finally, for 40 points, we look at the quality of English used by students and faculty. Now, we have a kind of extra bonus points, which we'll get to in a second, which involves the support offered to improve EMI and students' English abilities. So we realize that support is very important, especially if it's an institution that's still undergoing this transition from locally taught to fully English taught. Now, there's essentially 3 possible outcomes if you do the rating. An institution can become English ready rated, which means it scores 80 or more points across all 3 pillars. The second outcome is that it gets a conditional rating, so that it scored many points, but it didn't make the 80 points on its own. And so, but if we add the support points, it does reach 80 points. So this is a conditional rating, and we expect these institutions in the coming years to improve their quality and to become fully rated. And then institutions who score below 80 points, they do not get rated. So it's a kind of a pass-fail structure. Now, these are the rating badges that an institution gets, either conditional or certified. The data we use is primarily from online surveys. So we survey students who are taking the English programs, we survey faculty, and also we ask the institution about the various policies so that we can kind of triangulate what students and faculty are reporting and then what's going on the ground and what the official policy intent is. Our minimum response rates are based on some statistical rules, but yeah, to make sure there's statistical validity. Now, as I explained the survey and the results, you can have a look at our demo survey. You can either type in this URL, appliedhe.org/English ready one word -demo, or you can take a picture of the QR code, and then you can just try it out later or alongside. Now, the case study for today is, of course, our host, Thu Dau Mot University in Vietnam. The institution itself has about 16,000 students, but the English program which we rated has about 2,000 students, so still very large. This rating was carried out last year in December 2020. The surveys, rather. So we start with the language profile. Now, the language profile is not part of the rating evaluation, but it does give us an idea about what kind of situation the institution is in terms of students, etc. So if we look at the students at TDMU, and then the black dot is for TDMU, that's the target institution. The gray dots is for the other institutions that we've rated. We see that most students do not have English as a first language, have never lived in an English-speaking country. But more than 60% did English secondary education. So they've had exposure at secondary level, and they do speak it at home, which I was quite surprised. I'm not sure if that may have been a misunderstanding. Surprisingly high percentage claim to speak English at home. Also, this is for graduate students. Many of them studied in English at the undergraduate level as well. Now, the language profile of faculty, for most of them, it's not their first language, but many of them did study in English at the graduate level, although they didn't live in an English-speaking country, but they did complete significant parts of their secondary and undergraduate degrees in the English language. So you see big variations in where kind of the English language competency is gained from. And of course, if your institution has low scores on all of this, it's not that surprising that the outcomes maybe are a little bit lower as well, because simply faculty or students don't have the prior experience. So it's an uphill battle. So yes, please keep posting questions in the chat. I'll get back to those questions at the end of my presentation. The frequency of English use, we kind of use 80% as a benchmark for minimum. This is a little bit arbitrary, but it seems to work well in practice. And so we see that it appears that the TDMU faculty are quite consistent in using English. Faculty and students agree on that. Students themselves often don't use English. And this is a trend we see in many other institutions, as you can also see from the gray dots. So that's always a challenge. And there can be good reasons why you might occasionally use the local language. As mentioned, if students and faculty don't know the language that well, then it can be useful to explain a concept briefly or present a brief summary in the local language. So it's completely understood, but it does indicate that there is room for improvement in the AMI program. Now, if we look at intensity of the course components, basically the degree to which all the course components are done in English, TDMU scores very high. I mean, all the institutions we looked at scored above 80%. It basically means that they take English very seriously. The whole course is supposed to be in English. And TDMU is no difference. In fact, it scores extremely high. It's one of the highest scores in the sample of institutions that we looked at. So that's a great sign. Then in terms of the assessment by the faculty, they also say that almost everything is done in English, 90%, even 100% for the course supplements. So that's very encouraging. Now, the administration components, according to students, you can do almost everything in English that you need to do, and the faculty basically agree with that. So again, if it's around 80% or higher, that's a good sign. Then in terms of the quality of English, so we rate quality in a sense on a relative scale. We're not, so we ask students and faculty to assess each other, to assess their peers, and to assess themselves. And what's kind of interesting is that students at TDMU tend to be a little bit more confident with spoken than with written. So written quality is a little bit lower than spoken. So that's an interesting outcome, and could suggest that that is something that you should perhaps work on in the future. Then for the faculty assessment, people seem to agree that faculty is very competent in English, and of course that's an essential requirement of a good EMI program, and no difference at TDMU. Now, looking at support, again, most of the institutions we evaluated seem to offer very strong support. That's not really a surprise. They're located in countries like Indonesia, Taiwan, Vietnam, where English is definitely not the local language, and institutions recognize that they need to offer that level of support. And again, TDMU offers very solid support in academic writing, ESL, presentation skills, etc. And the same goes for support for faculty. Incredibly high, the highest in our sample. So faculty at TDMU seem to be very well supported. Now we try to compare a little bit official policy to the student and faculty experience. We do this a little bit because sometimes in large institutions, policy can be one thing, but what is actually done on the ground can be a bit different. Luckily, that doesn't seem to be the case at TDMU. So this is kind of a list of best practices, things that should officially be in English if you run a strong EMI program. And that appears to be the case for almost everything. Now, there can be reasons why it's not official policy for flexibility purposes and whatnot. But the fact that students also agree that it's the case in almost all of these cases, as do faculty, suggests that what is the policy is what is happening on the ground. It's very good that that's completely the same. It's a very good sign. The same thing for support. Here again, ESL courses are part of the official support. Maybe other parts are not official policy, or maybe they're done ad hoc, or maybe they're done at the department level. But the fact that they're highly evaluated is very encouraging again. Then if we look at the frequency of use, the official policy is that English should almost always be used by faculty and always by students. But in reality, students don't always use English. So here we see a big gap between what is policy and what is happening. Nothing wrong with this. Again, there can be very good reasons, but this suggests that this is an issue to pay attention to. So now we go to the kind of scoring and results. I mean, at the end of the day, it is a rating, so we share with you the scores. And again, thanks to TDMU for letting them share their data with all their colleagues here in Vietnam. If you quickly go through the scores, you mainly see that TDMU does incredibly well, but student English frequency is really where the points are a bit lower. English quality is fine, maybe a little bit lower for students, again, not so surprising. So TDMU ends just below the 80-point mark, but the quality of English language support is very high. And so taken together, TDMU scores more than 80 points, for which congratulations, obviously. So if we evaluate the results, there have been sufficient survey responses from students and faculty. The 80 points on the 3 main pillars were just not reached, about 75 points. But with the support pillar, TDMU reached the 80%, and therefore they get the AppliedHE English Ready rating conditional. So our congratulations to TDMU of being the first AppliedHE English Ready rated university in Vietnam. So no small achievement, and we're very happy that they took part in this initial rating exercise. And perhaps during the Q&A, we can have some comments from people from TDMU. To what extent is what we've realized in the rating, does that fit with your experience of the results? Because we're very keen to know if what we're quantifying with the rating, if that gels with what you're seeing on the ground, and perhaps providing some more context, especially to the fact that usage of English by students themselves tends to be a bit lower. Well, what are the reasons for that? Would be interesting to discuss. Next, since time allows, I will briefly look at the online ready rating, which is our online rating system for programs offered online. And I'll run through this a little bit quicker, but it just gives you an idea of all the different things that we have. So for the online ready rating is intended for online education, because we've seen huge growth with the COVID-19 pandemic. It's likely to remain that way in some ways, because in certain situations, online education is better. I mean, think of a classroom with 500 students. Obviously, an online course, perhaps a good recording online, is preferable to having something like that. However, there's also huge divergences in what quality online learning is. And this is basically in response to client demand. We have clients calling us saying, hey, can you please do an online ready rating? And so it was born. Now, the benefits actually are a bit similar to the English ready rating in just that it's now focused on online learning. So it's an opportunity for global benchmarking, seeing where your institution stands. It's an opportunity for marketing and branding, especially if you're looking to brand yourself in a market where perhaps they're not yet familiar with the name of your university. It's also an opportunity for stakeholder engagement, everybody involved inside your university in online learning. So the rating components are course delivery, learning support, examinations and recognition, and faculty. And essentially, this is benchmarked and it overlaps very strongly with the US News Best Online Program ranking. So we looked at a lot of experts, a lot of initiatives, and this seemed kind of the clearest way to do it, to evaluate it. So we're really trying to compare you to how do you match up to what is kind of the best of the best worldwide right now. So we have lots of criteria that we look at. So for course delivery, we look at things like, are there classroom discussions? Is there interaction? Does the coursework involve online collaborative projects? Can students have complete access to an online library resources similar to on campus? Do the professors quickly respond to students' needs? Do instructors provide personalized feedback on student assignments? All really, really small things in some ways, but taken together, they all add up to the quality of the online learning experience. Now, in terms of learning support, incoming students, they have to be coached in online learning, time management, study strategies. You can't just expect a student to do this of the ball. There's a skill set you need. So hence are asking that as part of the rating. Also things like technology support, access to student counseling, career counseling, mentoring, all things that you usually provide on campus, but that you also really need in an online space, especially if students are not familiar with it, transitioning into it. Then for examinations and recognition, we look whether students can submit all coursework online, students can take all exams online, exams are visually proctored by at least 2 cameras, so that's a credible online examination system, and a whole range of steps to make sure that the examination is credible, that you can really say this online program is as good, as rigorous as the offline program. Also anti-plagiarism, credit transfer, all questions like that. Now to the faculty, we ask if they also teach on campus, whether they've received proper training for their online courses, whether they work with instructional designers to really get the most out of that online education experience, and also student satisfaction with the faculty and other aspects of online learning. Then how do we evaluate this? We do this again by surveys, so an institutional survey, and then a student survey and a faculty survey. Similar structure to English Ready. And again, you can have a look at the survey that we give so that you see kind of what questions people get at this URL, so appliedhe.org/online-ready-demo. And now I will very quickly, in the last few minutes, talk about our job ready rating. So this is our 3rd rating, which focuses on employability and quality of teaching and learning. Now, this is actually the oldest rating for AppliedHE, and it's actually undergoing some changes. So I'm presenting the concept to you now, but we're actually planning to slightly adjust it based on what we've been learning over the past 1.5 years running these ratings. So when we set out to design it, I think this is still true. We wanted a rating that's very relevant to stakeholders. We wanted it to be parsimonious, not too complicated. We also wanted it to be non-prescriptive. We don't want to force an institution into a model, because we realize that excellence can come in many different forms. And we wanted to focus on the fundamentals, measuring what is important now and also what is important in the future. Now, when we were developing this rating, we kept being asked about IR 4.0, so Industrial Revolution 4.0, that basically people's work with machines, they're no longer machines, and also the Sustainable Development Goals. And so a lot of those concepts are part of this rating. So if this is something your institution is interested in evaluating, you can, this might be something to consider for you. There are several rating variants. So there's a job ready rating for professional institutions which don't do research, for universities and business schools which do research, and for online learning institutions which offer everything online. So for the online ready rating, we don't look at whether people get a job after completing the degree, but for this job ready rating, we do look at that. So there's an important difference. Now, rather than saying, oh, we rate one university all the same, we have 22 employment clusters. So we divide each program under one of these clusters and we evaluate them. Partly because we realized that an institution can be good in different areas. So you might be very good in production industries, but maybe your art and design is not as well developed, or the other way around. And also because the fields themselves are very different. So we can't ask somebody from the processing industry to be evaluating an art and design graduate. It doesn't make sense. So this is why we have these kind of divisions into employment clusters. And the third reason is for communications. We find that students and also industry, they know which employment cluster, which industry they're in. And once they're in there, they reach out to a university or they go looking for graduates. So it's not that they look for a university and then choose their subject. They pick the subject and then go looking for a university. For the job ready rating, it's not an accreditation. So an institution needs to be locally accredited. There needs to be a secondary school leaving certificate, and you need at least 200 students enrolled per employment cluster. This is just so we have sufficient sample size. Now, the criteria, there are 3 parts to them. We look at outcomes and delivery. And if you look at best practices in evaluating kind of skills-based, employment-focused higher education, you always come to outcomes and delivery. This is kind of what people look at. Now, the 3rd thing that we added is the institution. We say you cannot have superior outcomes and deliveries without a very solid institution. The outcomes, we look basically at 4 different things. We look at graduate reputation, employability, remuneration, and advancement and entrepreneurship. And for graduate reputation, we basically ask employers, are the graduates good? For delivery, we look at teaching and learning, quite traditional. We look at faculty quality. It's important to note here that we don't look at the number of PhDs, for example. We do look at industry experience. We do look at whether they have a teaching qualification. We don't think the PhD, especially in a professional setting, is the indicator of faculty quality. We think industry experience is far more relevant. How can you teach for an industry if you haven't worked in it or are no longer connected with it? We also look at student industry exposure, where instead of saying, oh, you need to do this, 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 we basically look at the satisfaction from the industry partners, from the students, and from the faculty, and that's how we establish that. And we look at intercultural competence. So we've also have a measure for international exposure, but we're leaning towards intercultural competence because let's say that you don't have many international students on your campus, but you can still have a very interculturally competent student population by exposing them through online interactions, through all sorts of ways that are not necessarily involve having international students or international faculty on your campus. Then if we look at the institution part, we differentiate between professional and universities. The big difference, of course, is applied research. So applied research is not part of the professional job ready rating system. So we do look at institutional reputation. We look at inclusiveness and accessibility. And we look at community engagement for all factors. Now, it's important to note that institutional reputation is the reputation you have with your local stakeholders. It's not international reputation, it's local reputation. So that's important differentiator. And then for inclusiveness and accessibility, we look at like male-female, gender division, whether students are accepting of those who have perhaps physical limitation, whether older students are welcome, whether faculty's views are respected, etc. We also look at community engagements, things like whether people are aware of environmental outreach and things like that going on. The data is collected through surveys, and we're looking at 3 main surveys: a student survey, faculty survey, and an alumni and employer survey. Sorry. And we also ask for some institutional data, but this is currently being updated. So in a few weeks' time, we hope to have some more clarity on that. You can have a look at the Job Ready demo survey, though. That's done here. But very quickly, we ask all sorts of information from the institution. And we also run the student surveys. I think it's important to mention here that although these are online surveys, we always ask personally identifiable information so that we know that the person who's responding to the survey is a real person. So we ask for an email address and a phone number so that we can call them up and check, did this person really complete the survey? And that goes for also the online ready and the English ready. So we have a whole process to be pretty certain that the survey response is genuine, is real in our whole system. There's a question here if we will share slides. Yes, we definitely will. You can download the slides later on. You'll get an email about them. Faculty survey, similar setup, and the employer survey and the alumni surveys as well. Now, how does the survey distribution work? Your institution gets a link, let's say appliedhe.org/ the name of your university, and that's usually distributed often on social media. So we find that we get about 50% or more of our survey responses coming on people's mobile device. People are waiting for the bus, they complete the survey. So spreading it through social media has been very effective in getting a satisfactory response rate. We can also email participants, but we find that it's not as effective, number one. And number two, there's often privacy issues with sharing personal data. So generally speaking, the survey link, it works best. Now, for minimum response rates per employment cluster, again, we use the same statistical story. We can get into this, how we calculate it, how it's done. Generally, it works quite well, but we often have problems with employer responses, and this is partly why we're redesigning this system. Now, the rating timeline, and this is again true for other ratings as well, we typically have a coordination meeting, and then we set up all these online surveys for you, similar to the demo survey you just saw. That takes us about 2 weeks. Then we have a survey period, can be any time you want, really, just as long as we get adequate survey responses. Sometimes we can really bring this up quickly if there's an event or an occasion where it can easily be arranged. Then we send you a preliminary report with your results and we do the audit. So even if you choose to be rated, you can press the brake, stop the process at any time. You can always stop publication of a rating. So in that sense, there's never any risk to your institution. But if you want to be rated, then you need to publish the results fairly quickly, about 1 month after we announce the official results. You get all sorts of things, a rating badge, a certificate, a confidential rating report with all sorts of intelligence, and also an official rating profile on our website. Right now, for the job ready rating, we are publishing satisfaction scores. And as you can see, the universities we've rated so far, very high student and alumni satisfaction. So the surveys do show very interesting results. Yeah, I think I will leave it here with my ratings talk, and that we then get ready to go for the Q&A. So if I can ask speakers to come back onto video, also perhaps from TDMU, if you want to find some questions. And then while speaking, I saw there was a few questions coming in. So let me just quickly see if I can answer those. Okay, some of them are clearly for me, I think, for EMI, but the other ones I think are for Moritz. I'm not sure. Are there steps suggested to improve EMI at an educational institute? Well, we don't really offer the steps. I mean, we can show where an institution is weaker, but we don't give clear, concise advice. But I was thinking, I will have a quick look through these questions, and perhaps Prof. Moritz, also who's been, I assume, listening to the results of TDMU, with the, especially there seems to be this weakness with the English ability and use of students, he can perhaps offer some of his advice. And if somebody from TDMU also wants to comment, please feel free to do so at any time.
Sure. Thanks, thanks, Peter. So yeah, I saw a lot of questions for you, and actually great that this tool is now available. When I started introducing English as a language tool, of course, you know, we were pioneering and didn't have this guidance. I think the one of the key things though for students is to make sure they do not mind and are not afraid of using English. I mean, one of the key things I learned when it came to students is it wasn't always the quality of their English, but it's actually their willingness to use English, because they were afraid of making too many mistakes. And you know, and this is very important that students actually realize that using English as a tool, of course, do it as careful and as good as you can, but it's not a language test, right? It's not that they are studying English, they are studying something else. So taking away some of the anxiety for students to use English, even if it's not perfect, whether it's in writing or in communication, is something very, very important. And one of the things I recommended is this collaborative online international learning, where actually students work with other students often it takes away some of the pressure on students to use English as a language, because if they have to speak in English to their professor, they obviously will be a little bit more anxious because the professor might criticize, using the wrong word, or they do not understand, etc. But if they speak with other students in other parts of the world, everybody using English as a second language, actually, it's a bit more relaxed. And I think one of the big positive things we can do when it comes to EMI is actually making students comfortable speaking English rather than creating an extra level of anxiety there.
Yeah, no, I think that's great advice. Now let me go through some of the questions. I'll start with my trans question, who is from TDMU. So it's correct. We for the English Ready rating survey, we do an intake survey by the administrator who tells us how the institution is going, or what are the official policy, and then a student survey and a faculty survey. And her question is, do we have a clear picture of what is really going on at the institution, and why don't we consider recording the students' or teachers' speech samples to analyze their English quality? It's a great question. The English, yeah, we are trying to do kind of rating of the quality of English and not have an English language exam. I think if the purpose of you is to examine the quality of English, you should do that, and you should examine individuals. Partly the reason why we're a little bit hesitant in doing things like speech samples is that how English is spoken around the world varies hugely. English in Jamaica, English in Northern Ireland, English in India, English in Malaysia is spoken in completely different ways. And so we sometimes hear that the student says, well, I cannot understand this teacher speak English, although they are 100% native speaker because they have thick accent and whatnot. Whereas people might be more familiar with somebody whose English is not his first language, and then they can understand that. So we basically feel if English is well spoken, the students can understand what is going on. Maybe the teacher is speaking slow enough or something like that, then that is good. That is a good sign. So we want to keep that kind of flexibility in our rating to allow for the fact that ratings are kind of tailored to the country and tailored to the local situation, rather than us imposing, oh, everybody has to speak English in a certain way. I think that's an important reason there. And I think also something interesting to mention that Moritz mentioned, the idea that if you have people who are all English as a second language speakers together, it does go easier. They might speak a bit slower, they might be more understanding and better realizing the kind of mistakes you make. So yeah, hence the reasoning for assessing quality in a more flexible way. I hope that answers your questions. Then there's a question, how can AppliedHE, I'm assuming the English Ready rating, help students and instructors to compete in the international labor force? I suppose it's, I mean, the rating is first and foremost is for the institution to help it do its job better, so that you can understand what's going on in an institution. Often you think you know what is going on in an institution, but seeing it objectively rated and measured can be a very powerful tool, because maybe you're already thinking, okay, maybe our students' English wasn't strong enough and that's holding us back. But then having a kind of international assessment to point that out again, that can really be something where you can get all the different stakeholders in your institution, faculty, decision makers together to then design a solution to solve it. And hopefully by showing you how the institution is doing in English, you can make the appropriate improvements, which will help your students and your faculty members improve themselves. I think in the case of TDMU, you see that there are some areas where there's a little bit of weakness, but there's huge investment in support. I think it's exactly what you want to be doing. They ask, in the result related to the frequency of the use of English language, why is the faculty's result lower than that of students? I'm not 100% sure. I would have to go back, but we do ask students and faculty to evaluate the frequency of English language use, so that we get a kind of balanced picture. My understanding from the results is that mostly the students' use is lower, but perhaps there's a result which is not super clear. If you can send me a message, then we can go over it personally. The rating badge, there's a question.
I think
Oh yeah, go ahead, Mandy.
right. So the rating badge is valid for 3 years, and the fees for joining at the moment, our rate is 25,000. But if more institutions come in as a big group, we can possibly look at a group discount.
Okay, great.
I think that one is for Moritz.
Okay, and the next question, yes, I think is for Moritz. Could you give us some examples of best practices of EMI from European universities? What support is offering to students and lecturers whose English is a second or foreign language? You're muted at this moment.
Yeah, no, I
Okay.
know. I'm not that fast. So I'm pleased to say that more and more European universities have embraced EMI and over the years have put sophisticated language support in place for both staff and for students. Of course, over the years, when it comes to staff, it's actually not just the support, but it becomes a criterion for being appointed at the university. So in some ways, the important thing there is also having a support for the students on campus. So many universities, including my own, we have a language school called the Language Gallery, actually then sets up a branch on the campus which offers English language, and we can utilize that. And for instance, when a student arrives and we see they are struggling a little bit, even though they still have managed to make the admission criteria, then we give them free access to the language course, or sometimes we actually make it a condition for continuing studies to do the language courses and do a test and show that English is good enough. Of course, we do that in a more subtle way with our professors normally, and professors often prefer to do it off campus where they feel more comfortable. So for instance, we also have a school, we have schools in the UK, we have a school in Ireland and so on. So they would prefer to go to our school, let's say in Ireland, and not be sitting there amongst other colleagues, and that's, I understand, is more from being a bit more comfortable learning without having all other colleagues and students there. The other thing I want to add to that, Peter, is obviously we look at improving English language, but there's also the aspect for instance, incoming students and also incoming staff who actually might not be speaking whatever German or Dutch or Vietnamese or whatever, but who do obviously benefit from understanding at least the basics, so they can read the signs, can understand the basic letters, etc. So it's not only having English language support on campus, but it's also having some language support for international students and for international staff to embrace the domestic language, so that they settle in with less difficulty.
Great, thank you very much. There's a question for Mandy from Trong Dao. Hi, Miss Mandy. In your presentation, you mentioned the internship opportunities for students. Is it available online? How can we get our students to enroll in the program? Thanks for the webinar.
Right, so currently it's still in a pilot stage, but the way I envisage the whole thing is we need to get an employer with a problem from any country, anywhere. And we intend to get, say, for example, 5 different countries with 5 different groups of students from different countries. So we will start off with a grand opening, and the student is expected, and all this is online, of course, on Zoom. Student is expected to keep the Zoom room open, say, for example, 2 days, if that's the duration of the event. And all of them need to have the room open so that mentors and speakers and all that can come in and out, chatting to them and all that. So this, as I mentioned, will give students a chance to meet international students from other countries. Even before they graduate, they would have a whole pool of friends. And for the universities, they get to, of course, market the brand or make known the brand to students from other countries. And also the employer would have a huge, diverse pool of talent to choose from. And students will also get a chance to have a feel of the internship, what it's like, and perhaps they might consider a career in that after they graduate, or perhaps they think they want a career in that, but after trying it out, they may not want to have a career in that particular field. So it's still in a pilot stage. If you're really interested, can we communicate offline, because it's quite lengthy, the whole explanation, etc. I'll put my email in the chat group, so you can write to me directly. Thank you.
Okay, then I'll go to a few more questions. Somebody mentioned the EF English Proficiency Index, which is apparently produced by Education First in Sweden. I think I've heard about that. This is, of course, different. Yes, we are looking to, it mentioned companies, institutes, individuals. No, we look at the institution level or the program level. So basically, if a program is English ready rated, you, as an international student who speaks English, or as let's say a local student who wants to be taught in English, can go there with the confidence that you will get a high quality English language program. So we measure programs that are taught in English at higher education institutions. That's just, thank you for that question, and that to clarify. Somebody's also asking how many universities have used AppliedHE so far. Well, it depends how you count. We have a fantastic mailing list.
Yeah. Right. So, okay. So how do you count it for using? So bear in mind, we started the company in January of 2020, right smack into a pandemic. Instantly, the moment we started, we couldn't even travel. So that was a huge challenge for us. But taking all that into consideration, and 1.5 years later, this is all, you know, the whole lot of stuff that we've done. I think it's not that bad. So in terms of how many people have used us or how many universities, again, as Peter said, depending on how you look at it. So a group has used our ratings. Several universities have attended our events throughout the whole year.
With Rankometer, we've ranked 500 universities around the world. So it all depends how you look at it.
So for a 1.5-year-old company, I think we're not doing too bad.
I also want to pick up on something. There was a question earlier, do we help you improve after you did the EMI ready rating? Well, of course, the report can be very helpful, and we can sit down and explain that to you. But EMI can also offer consulting services, which are kind of tailored, and yeah, we have an approach to that. So if the EMI ready rating is a good starting point, it's also something that's very useful for consultants to look at, so that they can kind of see where you're coming from. And then as a first step or evaluation into English, into improving English. Okay, I see more questions coming up. How to evaluate if EMI English like, or do they speak English like the student's mother tongue? Well, the EMI English ready rating is not intended for students who speak English as a mother tongue. It's intended for students who speak it, and faculty who speak it in a non-English speaking country, so that they can communicate effectively in English, but we don't expect them to speak it as if they grown up speaking it. So somebody asked, is English ready like a kind of English proficiency certificate? Yeah, you can say that, but it's of course for the institution. So it gives a quality benchmark of the institution, but let's be very clear, it's not an accreditation or anything like that. It's a rating, it's an evaluation. It gives you a quick picture of where you stand. You can quickly compare yourself, and that's it. And of course, at this time, our database of institutions we can compare you to is a bit smaller. But of course, in time that will grow, and we will also send you updates to compare. Is it globally recognized? Yes, of course it is. Well, we like to say it is. because AppliedHE is a known quantity in a growing area of higher education. But it's a very transparent methodology. There's very strict quality control. So if somebody has questions about it, I think we can answer all of the difficult questions. So in that sense, yes, it's a globally recognized global standard rating. I think we are now exactly at 4:20 Vietnamese time, 5:20 here in Singapore. And it's time to move to our closing. So if I may invite Dr. Tran Ngoc Mai, the head of English programs at Thu Tao Mot University, to deliver her closing comments.
Okay, thank you, Peter. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We have reached the end of our webinar, and I believe that you have obtained a lot of useful information from the presentation as well as the Q&A session. So first and foremost, on behalf of Thu Tao Mot University and the Faculty of Foreign Languages, I would like to take this opportunity to express my appreciation to AppliedHE agency for supporting us and to amazing speakers for their successful presentations. My deepest gratitude also goes to all of you who attended the webinar. Without your input, ideas, and discussion, the event would not have been successful. It's been a pleasure being with you today. I hope that through the webinar, you can find some solutions to the educational problems that you encounter in your context. And I do hope that we can meet again in the next webinar in the near future. I wish you all good health, success, and happiness. Thank you again for your participation.
Thank you so much. And now Mandy Mok for the final words.
Right, thank you everyone for your time today. I hope you've enjoyed the presentations and find the information useful. I would like to take this opportunity to thank TDMU, who have worked very hard behind the scenes to make this webinar possible, especially Ms. An Nguyen and her team. And thanks again to you, the audience, of course, for taking the time to join us today from Vietnam and beyond. Although this marks the end of this webinar, I hope to see all of you soon, online of course, at our next webinar, Fireside Chat on 4th August at 8 p.m. Singapore time, which is 7 p.m. Vietnam time. See you soon. Thank you.